We are starting a new week, and as has been the routine in recent hectic off-season weeks, another piece of the puzzle involving Jonathan Kuminga and the Golden State Warriors behind-the-scenes activities emerges. Conversations in the franchise's hallways have heated up, and what was once mere speculation is now taking shape. There is a clear impasse, and Kuminga's future is in question. But that's not all. A familiar name re-enters the radar: Nikola Vucevic. Does the Warriors still have room and willingness to revive this negotiation? Before we dive into the tensions of this saga, let's take a brief pause. Who misses that magical Golden State team of 2022? Champions, intense, connected, the feeling of dominance, the harmony on the court. All of that seems to be a thing of the past, and as time goes by, that reality feels further and further away. If you also miss that team, now's the time to show you're still here. Hit the like button and stick with me until the end of this script. Now let's get straight to the point. Last Friday, Anthony Slater released a detailed article that shook up the NBA's behind the scenes. The focus, the stagnation of negotiations between Kuminga and Golden State. For months, there has been talk of a possible contract extension, but what seemed simple has turned into a tense game of strategic silences and firm rejection. To start, Slater confirmed something that had been speculated for weeks. There was no formal offer from the franchise before the official start of free agency. That's right. No numbers were put on the table while Kuminga was still eligible for an extension. According to internal sources, the franchise may have discussed values internally, perhaps somewhere between $25 million and $30 million annually, but nothing was formally offered to the player. Now, with the market open and other priorities emerging, Golden State has finally brought something concrete to the table, but the timing may have been wrong, or worse, the offer came below expectations. Last week, the Warriors made a formal offer to Kuminga's agent, Aaron Turner. The speculated amount is around $20 million per year in a 3-season deal, possibly structured as 2 guaranteed years and a third optional. Kuminga's team's response was clear: "This doesn't meet our goals at the moment." According to Slater, the player himself considered the offer unappealing. That says a lot. So what exactly is Kuminga looking for? Money, of course, is part of the equation, but the decisive factor is the role he will have on the court. It's not enough to be well paid. He wants to be a star. He wants to be central to the team. And the Warriors right now neither have the structure nor the tactical plan to make him the team's star. The roster is filled with veterans. The style of play is still centered around Curry, and Coach Steve Kerr has made it clear that Kuminga needs to adapt, not the other way around. Faced with this impasse, Kuminga and his representatives have shifted their focus, finding a team interested in a sign and trade, a trade that would allow him to start fresh in an environment where he could shine with more freedom. And in this scenario, 2 names have emerged with some interest: Sacramento Kings and Phoenix Suns. But negotiations with both are far from a conclusion. In the Kings' case, there is a peculiarity. The franchise had presented a package involving Devin Carter and Dario Saric, but there's a scheduling issue. Carter can only be traded starting September 13th. Until then, any discussion is on hold. Saric, on the other hand, came from a recent trade and also has contractual issues that block the negotiation. The only player who could be moved immediately would be Malik Monk. But there are 2 obstacles. First, it's unclear if the Kings are willing to involve Monk. Second, the Warriors may not see enough value in him. Phoenix, on the other hand, showed more direct interest, but the possible package involving players like Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal doesn't excite. Even if the Suns add names like Nick Richards, the deal still seems far from what Golden State wants. A young player with real growth potential and at least 1 first-round pick. So far, no team has come close to meeting that demand. The problem is time. The longer this uncertainty drags on, the more both parties will suffer. If the season begins without a resolution, Kuminga will step onto the court frustrated, without the contract he wants, and probably with a secondary role he's no longer willing to accept. And the Warriors? They'll continue with a valuable piece stuck on the roster, not using him properly and getting no return in exchange. It's the kind of mistake that can cost dearly, not only in on-court performance, but in roster management as a whole. The situation could become even more delicate if Kuminga opts for a radical path, signing the $8 million qualifying offer. This would make him an unrestricted free agent next summer, in July 2026. And most importantly, it would give him, and only him, full control over his future. The franchise would no longer be able to trade him without his approval, as the qualifying offer includes a no-trade clause. This is the riskiest move of all, but according to Slater, it's being considered. Kuminga could opt for a bet-on-himself contract, 1 season to prove his value, and then test the market with freedom. But there is a history of failure in this path. Several players who attempted this route ended up with no market, and signing for much lower than expected. Kuminga is still young and promising, of course, but the risk is too high for everyone involved. My take? A trade needs to happen, and it needs to happen soon. It's not just about finding the perfect package, but about avoiding turning this situation into a problem in the locker room. If Kuminga is not willing to accept the role the Warriors offer, and if the franchise is not willing to elevate him to star status, the best move is to part ways. It's better to get useful pieces now than to insist on forced coexistence that will only deteriorate the internal environment. And there's a silent deadline in this process. Afro-Basket. Kuminga will represent the Democratic Republic of Congo in the tournament starting on August 12th. It's obvious that he and his agents want a defined future before stepping onto the court. An injury during international competition without a guaranteed contract could ruin his value, and the Warriors know this. Meanwhile, Golden State remains paralyzed in the market. The uncertainty surrounding Kuminga blocks other negotiations. The franchise does have verbal agreements with names like Al Horford, who would come on a mid-level exception, and DeAnthony Melton, possibly on a minimum salary. Other names like Malcolm Brogdon and Seth Curry have also been rumored, but none of these signings will be closed before Kuminga's situation is resolved. It's as if the entire offseason is on hold because of one decision, and this is where the second name in this script comes in, Nikola Vucevic, a player who was already of interest to the Warriors in the last trade window. In February, there was a real attempt to negotiate, but Chicago Bulls and Golden State couldn't reach an agreement. Now, however, the Montenegrin center's situation is even more uncertain. According to Jake Fisher, the Bulls have been trying to trade Vucevic for at least a year, unsuccessfully. No NBA team has shown real willingness to take on his $20 million annual contract. This creates an increasingly real possibility, a release. If Chicago can't make a trade, they may opt to cut the player mid-season. Of course, there is internal resistance. Patrick Seaman, a journalist specialized in the Bulls, says that the franchise's management is averse to cutting heavy contracts. They avoid what they call a sunk cost, but sources from Yahoo Sports confirm this possibility isn't ruled out. And if it happens, Golden State would be ready to act. It's not about offering a big payout. If Vucevic is waived, he will still receive the $20 million from Chicago. In San Francisco, he would come on a minimum contract as an experienced backup center, a player with a good shot, solid game reading, and who can still provide 20 efficient minutes per night. Defense isn't his strong suit, that's true. But, at the minimum market value, it's a safe bet. And in the Warriors' current scenario, every detail matters. The question remains, would you bring Vucevic to the Warriors roster? Write your thoughts in the comments, yes or no. And more importantly, what would you do with Kuminga right now? What's his value? He is holding up the team's offseason, and there's no easy solution in sight. If you've made it this far, take a deep breath and prepare yourself, because the story isn't over. If there's one word that defines the current moment of the Golden State Warriors, it's pressure. Not the kind of pressure that comes with a Game 7 in the finals, but something even more delicate. The silent pressure that builds up off the court, behind the scenes, in boardrooms, and in the subtext of every public statement. Because while Jonathan Kuminga and his team are playing chess with the franchise's future, the Warriors are walking on eggshells, trying to preserve the dignity of a dynasty that seems increasingly distant from its prime. The current situation isn't just about re-signing a young talent. It's about defining who will be the face of the team's future, and to a certain extent, whether the franchise still believes it can build a new winning cycle with the pieces it has. And that inevitably leads us to talk about Steve Kerr. Kerr has never been a coach who handles uncertainty about players' commitment very well. He likes tight-knit, aligned groups who believe in the system and play for each other. That's why Kuminga's indecision is already starting to cause discomfort. Sources close to the locker room report that, although there is no open conflict, there's a growing sense of unease. Some veterans are already tired of the Kuminga soap opera. And honestly, who can blame them? In a roster that's already dealt with Kevin Durant's ego, Draymond Green's intensity, and Jordan Poole's ups and downs, the last thing they need is more instability. And Kuminga, even though he's discreet off-camera, represents exactly that. An enigma that hasn't yet decided whether he wants to be part of the Warriors' history or create his own somewhere else. What's most concerning is that this collective doubt is stalling the roster's evolution. Without knowing whether Kuminga is staying or leaving, and with no clarity about what the team truly needs to pursue in the market, the front office keeps postponing strategic decisions. Time that should be used to strengthen the group is being wasted in endless meetings about something that should already be resolved. From the front office's perspective, this isn't just about pride or internal politics. It's about math. The NBA's salary cap is tighter, penalties for teams over the limit are harsher, and Golden State, by tradition and investment profile, doesn't like to spend poorly. If Kuminga isn't part of a realistic plan, his presence becomes a financial burden. Still, there's a looming fear that the player will explode on another team. Imagine Kuminga being traded for average assets and, just a few months later, becoming the centerpiece of a young franchise. Imagine him becoming an all-star while the Warriors struggle to stay in the top 6 in the West. That image is frightening, and that's the biggest card Kuminga's camp is holding. That's why the front office is trying to buy time, not just to extract maximum value in a potential trade, but also to monitor the free agent market. If Kuminga ultimately decides to accept the qualifying offer and postpone his final decision to next year, the team needs to be ready to act immediately, either by signing a high-impact replacement or by adjusting the roster with surgical reinforcements like Vucevic, who we mentioned earlier. In fact, it's worth bringing him up again. The name of the Montenegrin center represents more than just a rotation option. He is, in a way, the symbol of a kind of silent rebuild the front office seems to be rehearsing. Not a radical overhaul like the Spurs undertook, but a generational transition disguised as continuity. And Vucevic, with his experience and technical profile, would fit into that logic. The question that needs to be asked is Golden State still trying to win now? Because if the answer is yes, what we've seen so far this offseason doesn't match that goal. The indecision around Kuminga, the inactivity in the market, the hesitation to go all in on players with immediate impact. Everything seems to suggest the team is in a holding pattern. But maybe the answer is something else. Maybe the front office has realized that the era of instant titles is over, and that now the best path is to prepare the ground for the next big cycle. And if that's the plan, Kuminga should be the centerpiece of that transition. The problem? He doesn't seem willing to wait for that future. At this point, we're back to square one. Neither side seems willing to budge. Kuminga wants a leading role now. Golden State wants high returns or a controlled value extension. And in the middle of all this lies the paralyzing uncertainty. Behind the scenes in the NBA, other teams are already watching this situation from afar as a market opportunity. Teams like the Orlando Magic, Charlotte Hornets, and even the Detroit Pistons are cautiously analyzing the possibility of entering the race. These are teams with cap space and a need for a young, athletic wing like Kuminga. But they all face the same dilemma. Is he worth the price he's asking? And more importantly, is he ready to lead? That doubt is legitimate. Despite his enormous physical and athletic potential, Kuminga has yet to consistently prove he can carry a team on his back. He's shown flashes, brilliant games, but also quiet nights, tactical struggles, and problems reading the game. He's still a project, a diamond that needs to be polished with patience. The problem is, he no longer seems willing to wait. And if he truly doesn't want to, Golden State needs the courage to act, even if it means accepting less than they hoped for. Because keeping a dissatisfied player never ends well. Recent NBA history is full of examples of that. Internally, the Warriors' front office has already started drawing up scenarios in case Kuminga remains firm. One involves accelerating Moses Moody as the main young wing in the rotation. Another considers using Wiggins as trade capital in an attempt to completely restructure the team's wing. And of course, there's the draft-based transition plan. But for that, they would need to acquire more picks, which would only happen if Kuminga is traded. In other words, the first domino needs to fall, and it needs to fall soon. Meanwhile, in the halls of San Francisco, the veterans keep training, the youngsters wait for instructions, and a cloud of uncertainty hangs over everything. Steve Kerr has already had one-on-one conversations with almost every player on the roster, trying to maintain cohesion and focus. But he knows that without a quick resolution, it will be hard to start the season with a fully engaged group. Preseason is just around the corner. The warm-up games are crucial for building chemistry, defining roles, and tactical adjustments. You can't show up on October 1st with this gray cloud hanging over the team's head. A group's energy gets drained when there's constant off-court noise, and no one knows that better than a team that's been through so much. Kuminga, at this moment, holds one of the most important decisions of his career in his hands. And Golden State, in turn, needs to decide whether it believes in him or if it's ready to let him go. The question now is simple. Who will blink first? Because time is running out. And when it runs out, there will be no more room for hesitation. As the days go by and decisions continue to be postponed, the Warriors' locker room is beginning to feel the side effects of this paralysis. While no player has spoken publicly, the atmosphere within the team has clearly changed. The lack of resolution involving Kuminga creates a very specific kind of noise, not the noise of arguments or fiery speeches, but the uncomfortable silence of doubt hanging over the group. A team that has always relied on clarity, identity, and cohesion now finds itself adrift. Steve Kerr, as a leader, is trying to maintain a sense of normalcy. He's holding open practices, investing in individual development sessions, and ramping up conversations with the younger players. But behind the scenes, the pressure is mounting, not only because of Kuminga's situation, but also because the upcoming season's schedule waits for no one. A rotation must be defined, systems must be trained, chemistry must be built, and all of it, directly or indirectly, hinges on one player's decision. Draymond Green, always vocal and influential within the roster, is reportedly steering clear of the issue. Those close to the veteran say he has learned from the past and doesn't want to be a source of tension like he was during the Jordan Poole episode. Still, Draymond's demeanor at practices gives away his thoughts. He knows that time and leadership are limited resources, and investing energy in someone who might not even be there on opening night could be a costly mistake. Stephen Curry, on the other hand, is focused on training, leading, and shielding the group as much as he can. But even he senses something is off. He knows that every year of his career matters more now than ever. At 36, Curry wants competitiveness, consistency, and purpose. And right now, the team feels trapped in a limbo, not old enough to rebuild, not young enough to reinvent. It's a team stuck in between, and Kuminga is the symbol of this crossroads. Off the court, the impact is already beginning to echo. Fans, influencers, and even respected analysts are split. On social media, the debate is intense. Some argue the Warriors should give in and pay Kuminga what he wants. After all, he's a rare, explosive talent with a sky-high ceiling. But there's a growing faction of fans who believe the player is pushing too hard, acting above the franchise without having proven enough on the court. Some fans recall that during crucial moments last season, Kuminga was inconsistent. His impact varied greatly. He could drop 20 points one night and seem invisible the next. While his potential is undeniable, his mindset still raises concerns. He wants to be a star, but he has yet to prove he's ready in every way, technically, emotionally, and collectively. And that carries weight, because Golden State's culture is built on sacrifice, togetherness, and patience. The franchise's biggest names didn't reach stardom by demanding space. They earned it. And even then, they knew when to step back for the greater good. Thompson accepted being the second option. Green, the third. Durant arrived as a star and adapted. They all understood that to make history, you have to lower your guard now and then. Kuminga is going the opposite route. He's using time, pressure, and the threat of the qualifying offer as weapons. He's playing poker with a franchise that for years mastered the game of chess, and that's where the danger lies. If the front office gives in too much, it sends a message. Players can force exits and shape their contracts through veiled threats. If they're too tough, they risk losing a promising talent in a bitter way. It's a thin line, and so far, no one seems to know exactly where the balance is. The front office, for its part, has been exploring quiet alternatives. There's a plan B being developed, and although no one is talking about it publicly, names are already circulating in internal meetings. Young players with affordable contracts, growth potential, and a quick fit into Kerr's system. Among them, rumors suggest names like Jalen Williams, Thunder, Tari Eason, Rockets, and even Benedict Mathurin, Pacers, have come up in informal conversations, not necessarily as direct targets, but as desired profiles. There's also the understanding that if the situation isn't resolved by the end of the offseason, Golden State could use it as fuel for bigger moves during the season. Players like Wiggins and Chris Paul still have contracts that could be included in trades, and if the team doesn't start the season strong, the front office might be more inclined to pull the trigger on bold moves. But that would be a last resort, because at their core, the Warriors still want to preserve their identity. Kerr wants a unified group, Curry wants stability, and fans, more than anything, want a team that plays with heart. The Kuminga situation has become a test for everyone. For the player, it's a chance to prove he's ready to take the next step, or not. For the Warriors, it's a challenge to show they can still make tough decisions without losing their soul. And for the fans, it's a reminder that talent doesn't always beat time. Sometimes time is what reveals who's truly talented. And if you've read this far, you're probably wondering, what happens next? The answer lies in a quiet but definitive date, October 1st. The deadline for Kuminga to accept the qualifying offer. If he accepts, the Warriors lose control. If he declines, the franchise gains more time, but also takes on the pressure of finding a quick solution. In both scenarios, the clock remains unforgiving. Warriors fans should prepare for an ending that may not be ideal, because at this point in the story, there's no more room for perfect endings, only decisions and consequences. What remains to be seen is whether the franchise will act with courage or with fear, whether Kuminga will be remembered as the gem that shined somewhere else, or as the talent that was polished until the end. The season hasn't even started yet, but for the Warriors, the game is already on. At 22 years old, a young Filipino player is beginning to gain the spotlight in an undeniable way. It's not just about his size, although his towering 2.16 meters naturally draw attention. What truly impresses is the rare combination of wingspan, mobility, and coordination he brings to the court. In an increasingly demanding basketball world, Kaisoto emerges as an intriguing prospect, carrying not only the weight of his technical skills, but also the expectations of an entire nation. Kai's journey so far hasn't been simple. Raised in Manila, he had to balance big dreams with the harsh reality of high-performance sports from an early age. After stints in smaller leagues, including seasons abroad, the young center has shown flashes of offensive talent and a defensive presence that is constantly evolving. His presence in the paint is intimidating and, despite his young age, he has already demonstrated a game IQ above average for players in his position. Now, rumors of a possible NBA entry, more specifically into one of the most iconic teams in recent years, are capturing the imagination of fans. There is talk of a potential opportunity with the Golden State Warriors, one of the league's most influential franchises, both on and off the court. If this move materializes, it won't just be a new chapter in Kai's career, but a new era of representation and global impact for basketball. Joining the NBA is no easy task for anyone, and Kai knows that. The American League is a ruthless environment where talent alone doesn't guarantee success. The physical demands are brutal. The speed of decision-making on the court, the intensity of practices, the pace of the game, and the sophistication of tactical systems require more than height and skill. They demand mental resilience, impeccable physical preparation, and a sharp ability to adapt. Kai has already played in the Japanese league, where he was able to show glimpses of his potential, but the NBA is a different universe. There, every mistake is amplified, every weakness is studied and exploited by opponents. To survive, and more importantly, to thrive, he will have to evolve quickly. Improvements in reaction time, endurance in longer games, the ability to guard quicker players, and an understanding of the league's complex defensive schemes are just some of the challenges he will face. On the other hand, the Golden State Warriors are not just any team. The organization has a strong track record of developing talent and giving space for emerging players to grow alongside established stars. Working in an environment led by names like Stephen Curry and Draymond Green could be a turning point for Kai. He would have access to a core of experienced leadership and an elite coaching staff capable of refining his raw talent into a key piece for the franchise's future. At the same time, the Warriors are at a delicate moment in their trajectory. Still holding firm ambitions of winning titles in the short term, the team needs to decide carefully how to allocate each roster spot. Young players typically don't have the luxury of making repeated mistakes, and Kai will need to prove consistently that he deserves every minute on the court. The margin for error is small, and the time to adapt will be short. There's also a cultural component that cannot be ignored. The Bay Area is home to one of the largest Filipino communities outside the Philippines. Kai's arrival would mean much more than just a boost in the paint. It would be a powerful symbol of inclusion and cultural connection. The emotional and symbolic impact of seeing him wear the Warriors jersey in an arena where hundreds of Filipino flags wave in the stands would carry a weight difficult to measure. It would be a gesture that resonates beyond California's borders, echoing across the ocean, in the streets of Manila and Cebu. From a commercial standpoint, the idea is equally exciting. The NBA, as a global league, has long understood the value of athletes who serve as cultural bridges. With a population of over 110 million basketball enthusiasts, the Philippines represents a market ripe for exploration. Kaisoto wouldn't just be a player. He'd be an ambassador of Filipino basketball on the world's biggest stage. Imagine the immediate effect on merchandise sales. Jerseys, caps, sneakers with his signature. Advertising partnerships with Asian companies, special broadcasts for the Filipino audience, basketball clinics held across Southeast Asian countries. The Warriors brand, already established as a global powerhouse, could reach even greater heights. But all of this depends on one essential variable: performance. No marketing strategy survives without being backed by results on the court, and that's where Kai will face his greatest test. He'll have to evolve quickly, showing he can protect the rim with authority, read the game with maturity, and contribute offensively with more than just the occasional dunk. His ability to move laterally, communicate on the court, and understand the timing of screens and rotations will be tested constantly. The truth is that Kaisoto carries with him as much potential as he does responsibility. He could become the answer the Warriors are looking for to face physically dominant opponents, offering rebounds, blocks, and a constant presence in the paint. But he could also be seen as a long-term project not yet ready for the main stage. The difference between these two narratives will largely be in his hands. The Warriors' playing style, known for its offensive fluidity and emphasis on off-ball movement, will require Kai to develop other areas of his game. It's not enough to be a traditional center. He'll have to become a modern player with a good mid-range shot, the ability to make the right pass at the right time, and above all, understand his role within a highly synchronized system. If he can achieve all that, Kai may not only remain in the NBA, but leave a lasting mark. He could inspire a new generation of Filipino athletes, proving that it's possible to dream big and make those dreams come true. He could also redefine the role of Asian centers in the league, following in the footsteps of other great international players who paved the way before him. More than anything, he could experience something few athletes ever do, the chance to transform not just his career, but an entire culture's perception within the sport.